Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled and pulled and pulled. And the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching, and the elephant's child spread all his little forelegs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching. And the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and at each pull the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him hideous. Then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long,
"This is too much for me."
Then the bicoloured python rock snake came down from the bank and knotted himself in a double clove hitch round the elephant's child's hind legs and said,
"Rash and inexperienced traveller, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension. Because if we do not, it is my impression that yonder self-propelling man of war with the armor-plated upper deck,"
and by this, O best beloved, he meant the crocodile,
"will permanently vitiate your future career."
That is the way all bicoloured python rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the bicoloured python rock snake pulled hardest, and at last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the elephant's child sat down most hard and sudden. But first he was careful to say,
"Thank you."
to the bicoloured python rock snake, and next he was kind to his poor pulled nose, and wrapped it all up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo to cool.
"What are you doing that for?"
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
"Excuse me,
Said the elephant's child.
but my nose is badly out of shape, and I am waiting for it to shrink."
"Then you will have to wait a long time.
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
Some people do not know what is good for them."
The elephant's child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter, and besides it made him squint. For, oh best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really truly trunk, same as all elephants have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder.
Ouch!
And before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it.
"Vantage number 1.
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now."
Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth.
"Vantage number 2.
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here?"
"It is."
Said the elephant's child, and before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloopy, sloshy mudcap all trickly behind his ears.
"Vantage number 3.
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now, how do you feel about being spanked again?"
"Excuse me,
Said the elephant's child.
but I shouldn't like it at all."
"How would you like to spank somebody?"
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
"I should like it very much indeed."
Said the elephant's child.
"Well,
Said the bicoloured python rock snake.
you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with."
"Thank you."
Said the elephant's child.
"I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to all my dear families and try."
So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. When he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. When he wanted grass, he plucked grass up from the ground instead of going on his knees as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off the branch of a tree and used it as a fly whisk. And he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squashy mudcap whenever the sun was hot. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went specially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus. She was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bicolored python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. One dark evening, he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said,
How do you do?
They were very glad to see him and immediately said,
Come here
and be spanked for your satiable courteosity.
said the elephant's child.
I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you.
Then he uncurled his trunk and knocked two of his dear brothers head over heels.
Oh, bananas!
Said they.
Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?
I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River.
Said the elephant's child.
I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep.
It looks very ugly.
Said his hairy uncle, the baboon.
It does,
Said the elephant's child.
but it's very useful.
And he picked up his hairy uncle, the baboon, by one hairy leg and hove him into a hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich aunt's tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by the hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush. And he shouted at his broad aunt the hippopotamus, and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals. But he never let anyone touch Cola Cola Bird. At last, things grew so exciting that his dear families went off one by one in a hurry to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. And ever since that day, O best beloved, all the elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the satiable elephant's child.